Country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up.
It all began with Bill Maher doing what he does best, asking the hard questions no one else will. This time, he set his sights on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her push for a far-left agenda. Maher pointed out that many Americans are turning away from that ideology, seeing it as divisive and unrealistic. He asked the obvious question: if people are rejecting it, why keep pushing it? Most would reconsider, but AOC remains convinced she's right, determined to push her vision no matter the opposition. Then Maher delivered a sharp, calculated takedown. Not just criticism, but full verbal dismantling. Every line hit hard, cutting through excuses and political spin, leaving the audience hanging on every word.
See a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
This issue has become the hill Democrats seem determined to stand on, the refusal to clearly define what a woman is. A decade ago, this wasn't even a question. Everyone understood that a woman is someone who can menstruate, become pregnant, and give birth. Basic biology, not politics. Then came the progressive shift. Suddenly, gender was called fluid, and anyone who questioned it was branded intolerant. But many Americans didn't accept that without thought. They asked fair questions, and instead of answers, they got lectures, insults, and cancellations from powerful voices on the left. AS progressives pushed harder to redefine reality. Much of the country quietly turned away. The result was one of the biggest setbacks Democrats have faced in years. Not because voters were hateful, but because they were simply tired of being told that truth itself was offensive. In the process, Democrats didn't just lose votes, they lost trust.
And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
This is what happens when you keep pushing people too far. Eventually, they push back. And when they do, it's not always in the way you expect. AOC and her allies acted as if their political power in deep blue states made them untouchable. They believed they could push any policy, no matter how extreme, and their supporters would never question it. But that confidence turned into a major miscalculation. While they were celebrating their influence, a quiet rebellion was brewing. Voters who once backed them without hesitation began switching sides, not slowly, but suddenly. And where did they go? To the very party AOC had spent years attacking, the Republicans. This wasn't a small shift. It was a political shockwave. One safe Democratic area started to crack, leaving AOC and her movement facing serious questions. Is this just a temporary stumble, or the start of a much bigger political reckoning? Because as Bill Maher's next comments made clear, the story might not end where she expects.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
If you've been wondering why Bill Maher keeps saying my lawyer and their lawyer, it's not about an actual courtroom. It's political theater. What he means is simple. Voters expect their leaders to act as their advocates, to defend their interests, not to sound like they're working for the other side. That's where Marcia's AOC and her progressive allies have gone wrong. Instead of standing up for everyday people, they spent their time lecturing, grandstanding, and pushing policies that make voters question whose side they're really on. Maher broke it down like a prosecutor, making his case. Clear, sharp, and methodical. He highlighted the widening gap between what voters need and what these politicians are actually delivering. The twist? AOC still talks like a defender of the people. But in the court of public opinion, she's starting to look like the one being judged. And when Maher drops his final argument, it's not going to be easy for her to walk away unscathed.
An 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, we gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why. Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
It wasn't just Latino voters AOC and her allies alienated. They also hurt the education system. Backed by the Biden administration, progressive policies made it harder to remove bad teachers. The result? Students paid the price. Between 2020 and 2023, math scores for 13-year-olds fell 9 points, the steepest drop in 50 years. Reading scores fell 4, yet many failing teachers remain protected. While AOC gives speeches and Sanders repeats his talking points, parents are left staring at their kids' failing grades. This isn't just bad policy, it's a generational failure. So now the question is, can a Sanders-AOC ticket really fix things, or are they steering Democrats toward collapse?
You're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher? Yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
Looking back at some of the Democrats' biggest policy flops, it's almost comedic. These weren't minor missteps. They were full-blown disasters. Defund the police vanished the moment crime spiked. Cancel rent sounded great in theory, but collapsed under economic reality. And scrapping standardized tests? Somehow, accountability became oppressive. As Maher joked, it's like Democrats are playing how to lose the middle in 10 easy steps and winning by losing. Yet, despite the wreckage, they still think they deserve another shot at running the country. Maher's not buying it, and he's making sure no one else does either.
President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer. A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only a few identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
Maher then made a point that hit hard. If Democrats want to win again, they need to do more than tweet slogans or preach from moral high ground. They have to face their failures and actually talk to the people they've ignored. Not at them, to them. Sit down, listen, and understand what real Americans are saying. Because relying on polls and think tanks is exactly how they lost touch, Maher's message wasn't sellout. It was wake up, reconnect, rebuild trust, and stop talking only to your own crowd. The voters who once believed in them have already walked away. The only question left is, will Democrats realize it before it's too late?
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me, and that you care so much about their problems and all the pro bono work you do. But you're supposed to be my lawyer. The Democrats need to be like the lawyers you see on billboards. You hurt, we fight.
In the end, Maher didn't just roast the Democrats. He forced them to face the truth. The party has drifted so far from everyday reality that many Americans barely recognize it anymore. Sure, he raps in humor, but his message cuts deep. The failures in policy, communication, and basic common sense are impossible to ignore. If Democrats want redemption, it won't come from doubling down. It'll come from listening, adapting, and reconnecting with real people. If they don't, voters won't just walk away. They'll lock the door behind them. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.